All right, Border Barrels, Winter it. We're coming to you live. We're doing another on-location podcast. You probably can't see my head.
In another new location.
Another new location. So basically we're at an iconic Albury venue known as Beer Deluxe. It is also known as Paddy's as well, but we're at Beer Deluxe tonight because we're here. We're going to try some beers. So yeah, Beer Deluxe, as we said, iconic venue, an absolute institution for the youth of Albury. Many 18th birthdays, many first beers, many first smooches on the dance floor. And
first gigs.
The amount of concerts I've seen here. Hudson and I saw Illy here.
Yep.
We actually met Illy about 10 metres away from where we're currently sitting.
Yeah, no, that's pretty
He's
cool.
still
He
kicking
liked
about,
my
isn't
shirt.
Were you wearing
He said cool shirt.
Oh, there
and
you
I was
go.
wearing an all-day shirt.
he? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Another
cool.
I was wearing an
Australian
Amity
artist.
Affliction t-shirt hoping he'd say something because they collabed and he didn't. So,
But
yeah.
the collab would have been after. Was it?
No,
Oh,
'cause
no,
that was that album, the one I liked,
True.
yeah.
Very- correct.
Yeah. Also, is this the first Beer Deluxe outside of Melbourne?
Well, yeah, I think so. I find that hard to believe because it's bloody good.
Yeah.
So one thing that was cool that when it changed over to Beer Deluxe in the front bar here, and for those that don't know, it's turned into a bit of a craft beer little joint. And if you want something on the border, this is one of the premier venues to come and try craft beer. So Dean and the team have always got some awesome stuff on the taps, and today is no exception. So we'll jump straight into it because we don't wanna keep...
You buried the lead. You
What?
said we're just here on location trying something new, but there's a bit more of a specific reason that we are here.
There's a bit going on. So there is a tap takeover happening here at the moment. And Hutto's hoodie may have given it away to those people that are astute watchers. So,
Fanboy Hutto.
yeah, you might have noticed that it is another Mountain Culture.
Trilogy.
A trilogy. So it is the third Mountain
Trilogy
Culture
of
pod.
beer.
Now, we do apologise completely by accident. We had the single hop series. We did both of those. And then also we had this opportunity come up. So we thought we could not let it go by without doing it. So, so Mountain Culture today posts a absolute ripper video for their 300th and 301st beer. Check that out on the Instagram.
If you like Beastie Boys, you'll love it even more
and if you like,
than... Yeah.
and those beers, Intergalactic Nipah and Another Dimension West Coast IPA. But the video is on Instagram. You just got to check that out. So very excited for this one. What was their first beer? Bit of trivia, you guys know?
Oh, we may have to ask somebody and see if he knows, but
Was
otherwise
it a
might
pale ale?
I know what it is.
Oh, you do?
Was it the American pale ale?
So would you believe it was the Juicy Pale,
Oh.
formerly known as Juicy Pale, currently known as the #1 beer in Australia? Bloody Status Quo. Like, as if, that's your first beer. Oh, I just whipped it. Like, not that it was DJ's first beer, but that's the first beer that they were released.
But they probably there would have been a lot of evolution from that Juicy Pale
Yeah.
to what has now become the #1 beer in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, cool. Anyway, well, and we're also lucky that we've got someone from Mountain Culture here to speak to. We're just going to take a little short break and see if he wants to get over here and have at it, I suppose.
Maybe he can tell me about my cult status credits.
Yes, maybe.
We need to know.
Yeah, very good. All right, we'll go and grab him and we'll get started. Cool.
That was so loud.
Round of applause.
Yeah, if that doesn't, it might get on the clap. We're pretty good on that. So there might be a bit of a janky edit between videos there. But here we are. So as mentioned, we're here in Beer Deluxe at Albury, and we have a very special guest. Jonny from Mountain Culture is with us for the Tap Takeover. Jonny, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh,
yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Very
Hey,
good.
is this your first time to Albury, or have you been here a few times?
I last travelled through here about 4 months ago. That's when I met Dean from Beer Deluxe, and we striked up the convo. I was driving down from Sydney en route to Melbourne, so it was a good halfway point. Got an overnight stay here, came in for a couple of beers, got
Nice.
the chat going, and it's good to do some business with these guys here. Especially with something like a tap takeover.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's we were just sharing before we started in the intro. This place is pretty much an institution for the youth of Albury. Everyone that's grown up here, like this is if they're going out for the 18th, whatever. It's here, and It's great for
Don't forget the Wodonga folk that
yes, the Wodonga folk,
either had one, unlimited amounts of money for the local taxi company, or two, had a sweet connect that would drive them home at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yes, well, mostly the mums.
That was me.
Out to the Wodonga crew.
Yeah, I was Wodonga, and Mum always used to come and get me, no matter the time or no matter how ratchet I was.
Yeah, so Johnny, if you need a lift home tonight, just call Hutto's.
Well, no, I realised the place isn't that big. So I got a place that's 600 metres down the road.
Oh, nice. Good.
Yeah, so it's a short walk in the rain.
No, that's it.
How do you stop by that?
For all the floors of Albury, we have a very high abundance of hotels and motels. Like, they're everywhere. Yeah. It's crazy.
But you know what the next stage is to fill all the mini fridges with mountain culture.
Yes.
Oh,
that's the plan.
Definitely.
Yes.
Well, that's why you're here.
That's why I'm here.
The only reason...
Go around and inspect everyone's little mini fridges.
As we love talking so much, we often forget while we're actually doing the pod. We're here to talk about some beers.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that. So, Johnny, tell us about yourself. And who are you? What do you do?
Who am I? Yeah. Well, I'm one of those beer gremlins that's on the road. You know what I mean? I'm a rep, and you can make of that what you will. I mean, a rep can be lots of different things. It can be a business development manager. It could be an ambassador to some degree, but it's an amalgamation of all of those things, really. We're in quite a fortunate position at Mountain Culture where, simply due to the success of the brand, we've got a big crew.
Yeah.
We've invested a lot in staff, and we've got a sales support team, Zach and Chloe, based up in Sydney. And they are basically an extension of me and all the other reps that are on the ground through obviously our main stomping ground, New South Wales, and then up into Queensland, which is quite new territory for us, and then Victoria, which is in the middle. So we've got reps on the ground, including myself. But thanks to sales support, it kind of takes off a lot of the strain from the day to day. So I am very much responsible for getting beers into pubs, hotels, on-premise venues, as well as the bottle shops. And Victoria's an interesting one, right? Because you've got that, due to licensing, compared to other territories in the country. People can open up bottle shops and have a drink-in option. So there's heaps of those, and they continue to open throughout Melbourne, which is really good. It's nice for small businesses to have two avenues of income coming in. People drinking in and then people buying to take out.
I was so glad you mentioned that. Last time I was in Melbourne, I happened to take a walk through a street in Collingwood late at night and couldn't believe the amount of retail booze shops where people were all just having a beer inside.
That's right.
That was news to me.
And I think it's kind of cool, like a lot of them have, 2 tables, 4 seats out the front, and that's all it is. It's like you go in there to a huge bottle shop, because obviously your bottle shops can have a wider selection than your local pub, just limited amount of taps versus cans in a fridge. And having those options, it's so cool.
That's right.
We don't have that here as such, like just a bottle shop that you pay a corkage fee and you're sitting out the front having a beer.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I think we're reliant on the local government and the licensing in which people can be granted. But I had spent 2 years in Sydney before moving to Melbourne, and I noticed living there that it's a different ball game. Well, at the time anyway, because I've been in Melbourne for 6 years, so I might be misinformed right now. But when I was up there in Sydney, it was different. You either ran a bar or you had a bottle shop. It was never a combination of the two. Whereas in Melbourne, it's the opposite, and I love that flexibility and freedom that people can have, because it gives the consumers something else to play with as well. You can go out and have beers, and even if you're only down your local for an hour or two, you can take some home. No worries. So my job is to place beer into venues, and obviously that comes with other things such as the beer festivals, which we orchestrate, and they come through thick and fast. Maybe not this time of year, obviously, because it's wet and cold and winter's upon us. But we're already looking ahead to the later stages of the year and trying to plan, get as much stuff into the calendar as possible. So we always have to try and work, 6 months ahead of schedule, really.
An extension of that, being mountain culture, obviously very high demand, I assume, for festival appearances, and
That's right.
It'd be more so for you guys actually finding spots in the schedule as well as...
That's right, but again,
So-
I am blessed with that support from head office, and like I said before, how we invest a lot in people. From the impression I get from DJ and Harriet, the owners of the brewery, that's really up at the that's up at the fore for them. You know, they're quite bold with their choices that they make, as far as I can see. You know, and they're not afraid to venture into the unknown, and if that means staffing your business properly and not being afraid of anything, then that's a good thing.
And all their decisions seem to be, from the outside looking in, super fun.
The
video, like we mentioned earlier, the video that they released today for the 2 new releases, that was my question. Obviously you're based down in Melbourne. My main thing coming into tonight was, obviously we see a lot on social media and how cool a place it is to work. Is that something that is exaggerated for social media, or is it a legit? It's just this organised chaos of fun and creating that environment where people want to be there, and that leads to better beer. Or
I can probably try and give you a speculative answer, because I don't actually know the real answer to that. Just because I don't spend as much time up there, working remotely.
For sure.
So, and I've only worked for them for about 4 months now. So we're all quite green to mountain culture, but so far so good. You know,
absolutely.
The impression I get, not only as a member of the crew, but also just from a consumer perspective, and someone who is on social media myself, then I see this stuff, and I think it's pretty crucial to have some kind of fluidity and some kind of consistency with your image, you know what I mean, and what you put out. And again, I believe we have specific staff up there in EME Plains who that's their job, you know what I mean? And again, that's awesome, because it means there's clear definition with who's doing what. You know, we've still got a lot of growth. It's mad at the moment, you know, but we're ironing out those creases. And what I mean by that is, it's just, staff need direction, and when you've got a big team, it's pretty important that everyone knows what they're doing and that we're not stepping on each other's toes. And obviously these things don't happen overnight with any business in any industry, but for mountain culture, from that kind of marketing side that you were coming from, I love what I see. You know what I mean? And it seems to work. You know,
Absolutely.
There's always a specific way with how companies engage with their consumers. You know what I mean?
So.
It almost feels like ground zero for popularity from a mainstream perspective. And I mean, turns out you worked there for 4 months, you say, so that would, the GABS Hottest 100, Status Quo, coming first, that predates you working for the company, I would say.
They got the result maybe, I don't know, 2-3 weeks before I started.
Yeah. But do you find that in its own right is are you using that as a selling point to try and get Status Quo into places, or are people already aware because of that success that they had?
Good question. I would say that these are rough figures. I would say 3 and 4 venues I approached to work with will know about that.
No,
so let's say 75%. But let's acknowledge the fact that remaining 25% is still quite a significant amount of people. So, they could easily say to me, "Oh, I've never heard of you," and that's fine. Whatever. There's no right and wrong. My job is to therefore educate people that don't know us into basically explaining, well, look, you're dealing with a real high-end product. You really are. There's no bullshit with that. And look, I've worked for other breweries before. I've worked in sales for 20 years, pretty much. There's all kinds of techniques that people can use in order to get some money in the bank. It really is. Doesn't matter what you're selling. Could be cars, washing machines, beer, or houses, real estate, whatever. I mean, every rep will have a technique. But for me, one thing that attracted me to the beer industry and ultimately mountain culture was just the fact that it is a laid-back industry. I can be myself, and I think that comes through when you're dealing with a bottle shop or a pub.
Yeah.
And the high quality of what you're selling, we know.
Yeah, I never have to go into anywhere and put on the hard sell.
Yeah, you don't have to convince.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is great, but that's a reflection of not just me; it's a reflection of the product.
Yeah.
But it, and without this sounding arrogant, it is kind of in a league of its own.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's selling itself at this point.
Yeah,
Just about,
yeah. So I'm going to put this on record. I still have a mammoth of a job to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not like I can sit at home in my home office 5 days a week and watch the sales rolling on through. Because why would they pay me a salary for that? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like you've got to get out there. I've still got to sell it because that 25%. And again, that's a rough figure. They need to be, like I say, educated.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because it would be wrong of me just to assume, oh look, there's Jonny walking in and I've got the merch on and
you know
look
this.
who I'm. You know who these
Yeah.
guys. No, maybe they don't. And it would be like I say, wrong of me to assume that. And out of respect to people, I prefer to go in and meet people from a business development perspective. I just like to assume that they don't know us. Because that's the safest bet.
Yeah.
Do you like? I guess based in Melbourne and mountain culture being New South Wales based, do you find that harder trying to compete with the local breweries around?
Not so much because if I'm doing my job properly, I should really be pitching mountain culture as well. Yeah, we're an interstate brand, but that's only ever mentioned if someone asks.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, as an Englishman, all I care about is supporting Australian product.
Yep.
Because this is the country that we live and work in.
Yeah.
This is where I live permanently now. This is my home. For me, I don't really read into barriers too much about different regions and different territories. I don't really care. If the product's good, I think a pub or a bottle shop should be buying it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter if you're
industry.
Tassie or from Queensland, whatever.
And the industry in
good.
Australia, what we've learnt is how much they all look out for one another. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to get, on the surface level, really, we are trying to get, or breweries are trying to get good beer into the hands of more people.
Yeah.
As it is, you're a sales rep for one particular brewery, but you've also got the advantage of now being a really reputable one at the same time. But you guys do so many collabs with other breweries as well.
We've done a few recently,
and we've spoken to other reps about this from Bridge Road and Akasha in particular, and just everyone supporting each other is better for the whole business, like the business as a whole of craft in this country. And even like yourself talking to us just as a podcast that likes to talk about craft beer, that's supporting the industry in its own right. So yeah, it's fantastic how everyone looks out for one another. And then
I think that's healthy. It is, globally, sure, it's a big industry. But domestically, you could come at that from a completely different angle. It's competitive, but there's still so many venues out there where the taps are dominated by the multinationals.
Yes.
Huge conglomerates, and whatever. Like they're going to attract a certain demographic, and again, there's no right and wrong.
Yeah.
It is a pain in the backside though. When I'm trying to sell a primo product that I think should be in everyone's hands, especially something like Status Quo with taking out that gong that it took. Like the idea is to get that into as many fridges in the country as we possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you do come across challenges and obstacles, and you could put that down to it being a congested scene.
Yep.
Obviously, but after COVID and everything, this could be a completely different question, but subject to chat about, should I say? But it's massively congested, like it has been for the last few years. But people are also speculating and saying, well, is it survival of the fittest? It's very sad that certain breweries haven't been having a good time recently. No one wants to see anyone fail.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't. It's that unity, like you mentioned, in the craft beer scene here in Australia is really important. But sure, at the same time, we're all out to succeed for the companies that we work for, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That has to come first. So I would be lying if I said we weren't competing.
No, of course.
Of course we are. But at the same time, we're all mates.
Yeah.
And we all like each other's product, but maybe it was always going to come to this. I don't know. When I first got to Australia in 2015, 8 years ago, when I took my first brewery job for someone else, it was just this bursting bubble 8 years ago. It was going nuts, you know. I was working in Sydney, and just to watch Marrickville take off like it did. It was going around. People were saying that per capita, Marrickville and Sydney's inner west was busier than Portland in Oregon.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, you can do your own Google searches with regards to that, but make up your own mind. But per capita, Sydney's booming, and we all know about Melbourne as well. I mean, Melbourne had a head start. I think the industry there has always been more established. But for me, fresh off the boat, shall we say, it was crazy. I was like, whoa, there's breweries everywhere.
Yeah.
But that was 8 years ago. So imagine what it looks like now. So that's my point. That's where I'm going with this. It's like, I think you've really got to look beyond just the marketing and the sexy looking cans and getting a good illustrator to do your artwork. Like, that's important. But if the juice in the can is not up to scratch, then your product's just going to be average at the end of the day. Yeah. And the consumers will eventually realise that.
Yeah.
That's why I took the mountain culture job in the end, because I took a little bit of a gap in between COVID. Obviously, it wasn't the easiest time.
Yes.
But I took some time off and just recalibrated, and I said to myself, if I'm going to get back in the game, it's got to be for someone really, really good.
Yeah.
And that's when I applied for this job, because I couldn't not apply for it. You know what I mean?
So you were already a fan.
Oh, I knew. I knew of them before I took the job.
Oh, that's great.
You know, like I say, COVID wasn't easy.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like I've been out splashing the cash in the local bottle shop every single weekend buying $20 cans of 500 mils. Like, I haven't, because you live within your means, don't you? And realistically, I buy what I can afford. But I always knew the quality of mountain culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's oh, geez, what's that? What
are
just
you
pick up?
drinking?
So we are doing
You've
it. We should mention
Yeah.
we are also tasting a couple of beers. We had the Status Quo first, because we had to, and that's how we introduced that.
Well, it was first in the eyes of GABS voters and the first in our mouths.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was
now
delicious.
Hudson's got the little card over there with the order.
Shall I read it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we started with the Status Quo, then we moved on to the Sub-Zero, the double dry hopped IPA, which is what
That's what we're all
Simon's
having.
asked about now.
So good.
And you had for the first time tonight.
No,
Is that right?
I actually
No.
had it. No, it's a funny one, that one. I had a can of it last night. Yeah, last night. It's all blurry.
A few cans.
No.
It's like you work for a brewery or something.
Driving up here today, I was sensible. So no, I had a silver bullet last night.
Yep.
And I really liked it, but I wanted to try it again tonight, because, as you know, on tap, there can be
changes.
those differences.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that helps me kind of make a more informed decision as to whether I like it. But of course I like it.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
Yeah.
I like the fact that the brewing team have been focusing a bit recently on the kind of liquid extracts of hops.
So from just reading it, the Sub-Zero comes from like a liquid hop keef.
Yeah.
Is that am I pronouncing keef
Yeah,
right?
I think so. I'd never even heard of it myself.
Yeah, I hadn't either.
Because I think we mentioned maybe 12 months ago when we, even 2 years ago in the beginnings of the pod, we were like, mountain culture do great beers, but we were struggling to find a variance within the beers. And as of late, even like within the last 6 to 12 months, they're just bringing out crazy, like different things. And they're really, like you said, they're expanding on the business. They're employing people in more jobs and they're doing all this stuff. But they also seem to be expanding in the way, one, brewing techniques, two, the type of brews they're bringing out.
Yeah, I like that too. And again, I feel like I should kind of put in my 2 cents into this podcast, not just as an employee, but from a consumer perspective.
Absolutely.
So if I take off my mountain culture hat for a minute, then you're talking to Jonny, who's just a beer fan.
A beer guy.
You know?
Yeah.
I think I view the brewing schedule as something that is thoroughly thought out, and it needs to be. And I'm happy that it is, because either as a consumer or as a rep selling the product, who wants week in, week out repetition, you know? And you could argue that might be inevitable, because if you're an IPA-centric brewery who are doing what you're good at, you know, because I love that. You know, again, that was why I went for the job, because I mean, yes, we make Moon Dust Stout. Yes, we make sours every now and again. All right, and we have a lager in the range. You need that stuff. It's necessary.
Yeah.
But we focus on what we do well, and if that's IPA, then But you could go through the mill, couldn't you? You could be like, right, well, what's next? We've done West Coast. We've done oat creams. We've done NEPAs. We've done single hop varieties. We've done wet hops. We've done at some point things come full circle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how do they differentiate? And I agree with you. I like what I'm seeing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I'm very green still, and I don't get to taste all the limiteds. So the ones I do, they blow my mind.
Absolutely. And like with the Sub-Zero, it's not only doing a double dry hopped IPA, it's doing a totally new to I would guess 90%, 99% of beer drinkers, like what they're doing to create the beer as well. Like they're not, and like you said, I guess if you hitch your wagon to IPAs, it's definitely it's a good call because we've got the haze craze at the moment that everyone's talking about.
But that's
There's
not,
so much
that's not even a
variance
recent thing, is
within.
it?
No.
The haze craze has been going for like
at
3
least
years?
3
Yeah, a
years.
couple of
At
years.
least,
At
yeah.
least, yeah.
Since COVID, for sure.
Yeah.
I think COVID was the year, or 2020 was the year I started buying a few more online, and then it was I saw the word haze and I just bought stuff.
And
Yeah,
I was sceptical myself.
Yeah.
But particularly with hazy pales, maybe not so much NEPAs. Like, I loved them since day dot.
Yeah.
And I could see why the trend came back around.
Yeah.
But with the status quo, this is going to sound completely biased, and it isn't, I promise. I just hadn't had a hazy pale that I fully kind of connected with
Yep.
before, And then when I tried Status Quo for the first time, it all made sense.
Yeah.
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 It really did. I was like, that's why it's number one.
Yeah, I would have to
It
agree.
makes sense.
I'd had a number of hazy pales. I'm like, and I had Status Quo just because I've heard it's a great beer and I hadn't had it before. And I just thought, pale ale, no worries. And I didn't even realise, because I had it out of the can for the first time, I didn't even realise that it was a hazy pale. And then, as you said, it all made sense. It's bloody delicious.
And then, you could always raise this as a thing as well. Like the industry that we all work within is centered around trends, and I make comparisons to other things like music or fashion. Music and fashion is centered around trends as well. One minute a certain type of music is cool, the next minute everyone's like, oh, you still listen to that? Really? Or a piece of denim. Like, why aren't you wearing that denim when that denim is no longer cool, but that is? And beer kind of follows a similar kind of trend. And I guess where I'm going is that that's that beer. It's been brewed so well, and it's gone to market at the right time.
Yeah.
And I think with certain brewers, they're quite keen to kind of jump in early before they've necessarily perfected it. So we actually, and this is me just from a consumer perspective with my palate, like I think there's some beers out there on the market who maybe they've rushed the process perhaps, and maybe that's why they haven't developed a really highly rated New England pale ale.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just makes sense. The status quo,
You drew the comparisons to music and fashion. Do you think Status Quo is going to be one of those timeless, like Status Quo could be that timeless beer? Like music and fashion have that one. Again, I'm no fashion person. I think I like music, but I like my music. But there's always that timeless. It's like we can always go back to that type of music or that type of fashion. It's like that will never go out of fashion.
I don't know. You could say it's on a 20-year cycle. I think 20 years is a good amount of time. I mean, because trends can last a while until people get bored and they're like, right, what's the next thing that's coming around?
I keep hearing it with lagers. We always say, we keep reading about this lager trend and we're trying to figure out exactly what that was, but then we've started to notice them in, I guess, the cold IPA styles or the Indian Pale lagers, I guess we could say. We're noticing those and we're actually, as just a trio, starting to enjoy those beers more, and we're thinking, maybe when people talk about a lager trend, they're talking about a variance of the lager. But as it is when it comes to the Status Quo Pale, it is, if you are a regular beer consumer who drinks your CUB beers and you've had a Stone and Wood you've enjoyed, or maybe a Beechworth Pale, and you get a Mountain Culture, that's going to look different, but you're going to love the taste. But because it's hazy, So maybe it will all come around full circle, but I think the actual flavour and the taste of it will be sort of the timeless thing you're talking about, Hudson, because you can't beat that quality.
Yeah.
So whether it's hazy and it's crazy or not, the taste will always stand out.
And I would have to say, for someone who drank cruisers when they were below 18 and wasn't really the biggest fan of beer, I really latched on to hazies because of their low bitterness and that sort of thing. It's sort of like they are sort of, I don't know, a little bit gateway in that way. But
For me, Status Quo, it kind of fills a void to some extent. Like I got really bored of drinking pale ales a few years ago. Even though they serve a purpose, you know, they're a good ABV.
Yeah.
There's a lot of variety with pale ales, obviously based on hops, I guess, and who's brewing it. But I just got bored. I was like, well, my palate either wanted a low alcohol Berliner Weiss, for example, or I wanted to go full on for an IPA. And there was this middle ground that I was missing. And maybe that's why I never really found anything I liked. But Status Quo, I drink that and I enjoy it when I want haze and I want juice, but I may not
mouthfeel.
Mouthfeel. But I may not necessarily want the ABV that comes with an IPA.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Like it's just that perfect middle ground. In fact, it substitutes IPAs for me to some extent. Because if I'm
That's a
round
good way of
at
looking
my
at it.
mate's house or I'm in the pub or whatever I'm doing, you know, I'm getting a bit older these days, which basically means my body's it's sending me signals. All right. What that means is I can't sink it down like I used to.
Yeah.
So I have to be quite selective with what it is I'm drinking. Like after just 4 IPAs tonight, I'm probably going to have heartburn for 2 days. You know what I mean? So and I'm not even exaggerating.
Well, we'll have conversations with Simo, and if I have a beer near him, the next days I smell that beer and I'm hungover.
yeah, that's true.
So if someone says to me, Johnny, are you going to come for a beer when you get back into Melbourne on a Friday night tomorrow? I'll be like, no, because I had 4 last night.
Give me at least 3 days a week.
I'm taking the mickey out of myself to some extent, but no, that's the reality of it.
This might be not a boring question, but this is more to do with, I guess, the sales and somewhat marketing to a point. I know in that COVID year, we were buying a lot of Deeds brewing beers, but they were doing the 2 beers fortnightly, which equals basically a
One
beer
a
a
week,
week.
yeah.
And I remember talking to these guys about that, thinking, man, that can't last. That can't last forever. But I thought, there's no way anyone else is going to start doing that. But then I started to notice a few more breweries do it. And now we see the frequency of beers that Mountain Culture are releasing. But I'm noticing the frequency isn't really having an effect on the quality. Do you think that comes down to just the quality of the brew team and that particular brewery? Or do you think that is the trend of the industry and any breweries that aren't doing that aren't going to be able to keep up?
That's tough. That's a tough question.
You led with that. This is going to be a boring question, and then it ended, and Johnny's like, "What happened?"
You should have led with Johnny. Take notes.
This is a tough one.
Here's my essay.
Sorry.
Here's well, it's a big question, mate. Just so you know. All right. So here's what I think. Aside from investing in staff, Mountain Culture have been investing pretty heavily in real state-of-the-art brewing equipment. Mm-hmm. As far as I know, don't take this as gospel, but I think we're like the 4th or 5th brewery in Australia to acquire the brewing kit that we've got.
Okay.
Like, I'm not a brewer, and I'm not going to tell your listeners that I know anything about it, because I don't.
That's okay.
But from what I understand is that it's very automated, it's expensive, and it's very high-end. And we've invested in that because we want consistency, and we realise the importance of consistency. We also realise that consumers out there that buy our product aren't stupid. The same with Deeds or any other consumer. They're not dumb. Like, they know what they're doing, and they know what they like. And how that is relevant is, as soon as they notice a little dip in consistency with their favourite beer, what's to say they're just going to pull the plug on it? I mean, there's so much beer out there. If suddenly, let's just take Be Kind Rewind as a classic example, right? Really globally highly rated NEPA.
Yeah,
Yes.
bloody hell.
Like right up there. If that suddenly, obviously due to our own mishaps potentially, if we weren't brewing consistently or we didn't invest in that equipment, then I don't know. I'm just guessing right now. Maybe, let's say, head brewer goes on annual leave for a few weeks. Two IC steps in. No disrespect to them. They've got the recipe. They should be able to brew it in the exact same way. But what if there was a slight difference there with whatever it is?
Well, it's removing that
and
variable.
Consumers notice and they consider that a negative. Then, look, sometimes you don't get a second chance in a highly competitive industry, right? And so I think that answers some of your question about the fact that we've got the gear in place for everything to be automated and for everything to be reliable and for it to work and ultimately just taste so good.
Thank you. I actually didn't intend for it to be such a loaded question when I started asking it. So thank you for a very informative answer.
As we've seen in the weekly email updates, the brewing system is huge.
The facility is massive, and I welcome you to go and visit.
I think we talk
you're
about
halfway.
this.
Like for me, it's a long journey from Melbourne, but you're in Albury.
Well, we want to tick off Katoomba. I keep saying it. Yeah, we want to tick off that first, and then head over to the Emu Plains facility. So you got to go to the original.
And for any listeners to your podcast who aren't already familiar, the key differences here is that Katoomba, the original OG brew pub, is still very much alive and well. That is where we brew the limited releases. So I mean, look, I love the Blue Mountains. If I had any chance to get up there, I would, because I'd combine it with some trekking and some climbing and some camping and some solid beer drinking. But go and visit the main production facility just down the hills in Emu Plains on the western fringes of the city for everything else. Sure, you can get limited to drink there as well, but they travel down from the mountains. That's how we differentiate the two. All the core stuff gets brewed out of Emu Plains. Limiteds in Katoomba.
Awesome.
So the $60 a week I set aside for that week's 2 limiteds going to Katoomba, not Emu Plains.
It's good to know.
But it's actually nice to have 2 venues, you know. Like, I think a lot of breweries would
Bridge Road's just about to. They're about to open one in Melbourne.
From what I understand, they've
already opened.
They've already got one in Brunswick East Village.
The cardboard bar. No, that's been open for
I thought
at least 12 months.
Come on, mate.
Oh, they were...
Come on, mate.
You're the third member of the podcast.
What do you host a podcast? Or a beer podcast?
Maybe what I read was they were looking for a new venue manager. I knew, maybe.
What?
I don't know.
No, look,
I read something.
I think almost all indie breweries would love a second venue, be that in their home state or elsewhere. But the reality actually is that with the money required to open and staff a second venue, you could put that money towards more brewing equipment. You could invest it into a more state-of-the-art canning line, or however you want to spend your money. So it's a bit of a tricky one. And
like you said, it feels like it's been ages, but we're still less than 12 months out of COVID. So to make that move now, especially, it's like it takes some real cojones, as they say.
Yeah, I think we're all hoping that we have stability now, right?
Yes.
I mean, we're hoping that big old Dan doesn't react in the same way that he did before, and that we can just manage it. Because it's never going to go away. No. It's just globally we have to manage it and just get on with our lives and make sure it doesn't disrupt the local economies. You know,
if anyone from higher up, DJ or Harriet, if anyone's listening, there's actually a old bar on Dean Street in Albury that's been vacant since about 2008. Prime location if you're looking for another brew pub.
2008? Wow, 15 years.
They've still got
no one want to take it?
The soul shakers are still on the table. The cutlery's still on the table for the last 15 years. They basically went, we're closing, close the doors, and everyone walked out and hasn't been touched for 15 years. It
makes you wonder what's going through the brain of the landlord, right? Like, whoever owns the building.
I think owns a few buildings in like that spot, and then they did put it up for lease for a bit, but it was like exorbitant prices. But anyway, imagine that as a mountain culture brew pub in Albury.
It'd be good.
Well, now you mention it, who knows? Who knows what happened?
You know, the weirdest thing is because you mentioned like the higher ups. For some reason, after Jonny mentioned Dan Andrews, I thought you were going to make a plea to the Victorian government. For some reason, I was like, "What's happening?
Buy this venue,
so we can drink it." Very good. So you've been with Mountain Culture a couple of months now.
4 months, yeah.
But you've been a fan for a while. So what would you say is Mountain Culture? What's your favourite release? Like, what's maybe one of the limiteds that you've ever had?
Can I give you 2 answers?
Yeah.
I'd like to let your listeners know my favourite core.
Yeah.
And then
Yes.
a favourite,
Okay, please do.
limited.
Yeah, thank you.
So, surprise, surprise. Actually, no. Be definitive, Jonny. Status Quo is my favourite, just because it's my go-to.
Yeah.
Love Cult IPA. That's
Yeah.
a strong second,
Yeah.
but there can only be one. And I already explained in the previous question why I love Status so much.
Yes, of course.
With a limited, what really stood out for me recently? Yes, Ransack the Multiverse.
Yeah.
Yes. Was that was the Union Hotel?
You're not far off. Yes, it was a collab with a venue. It was a collab also with an
Or was that Mr. West?
with a foreign brewery. So it was Mr. West
Mr.
from
West,
Footscray out
that's
in the western suburbs of Melbourne, and it was a collab with them and Collective Arts from Canada.
Oh, yeah.
Collective Arts,
I'm familiar with them.
like, I haven't delved too much into the US and Canada, but I keep seeing, like, if you're going to Collective Arts, is definitely, like, one of the names that you kind of...
They've got distro over here.
Yeah.
You know, like with any beer that's shipped into Australia, you know, I'd always say, you know, check the freshness before you know what I mean?
Before,
Yeah, just because it's just it's safe just to cover all avenues. But it is such a good beer, man.
Yeah.
Seriously, and we used another. Testing my knowledge now. We used another kind of hop extract oil, like similar to lupulin.
Yep.
Um,
Okay.
So it was just delicious. It was like an IPA on steroids, and I absolutely loved it. It was just the pillowy mouthfeel. The fruit was just immense, and it made its way from from Katoomba to Melbourne in about 3 or 4 days. So the stock that we had there for Good Beer Week was just like so
As fresh, yeah.
and it just ticked all the boxes. So yeah, that's my answer. So far, that's my favourite.
Yeah, very good. No,
Speaking
that's
of Good
awesome.
Beer Week, how'd you find that?
The bane of
Just-
my life. How do I find it?
Yeah,
Look,
like-
it's love and
like-
hate is the truthful answer.
Yeah.
It's great for the industry. It's great for mountain culture. We literally nailed 6 or 7 events just gone.
You were all over the place.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it was
and,
a
like
lot to
collab week. You were like,
Oh, man.
here's a beer that we've done. Here's a beer.
I actually didn't instigate that, but I got lumbered with it, and we committed to quite a lot. No regrets though, because
Yeah.
we were organised and we got our stuff together to make it work. But I think when you commit to that many events, there is room for error.
Yep.
For instance, if something doesn't come out of tank on time and there's a delay, or the freight company can't get it down in time, then that beer's not available, and you've brewed it, we've made it.
You've got these. Yeah, you've
at
got
our
these.
expense, and suddenly it's like not available. So there's ways in which things can go wrong, but we nailed it. Next year, who knows what approach we might take? Maybe less events, but make them a bit more refined.
Yep.
Look, whatever you do, as long as there's presence on the ground and there's stuff for the consumers to get involved with, and new and exciting ideas, I think that has to come first.
Yeah.
And the longer we go down this route of Good Beer Week, the harder that it actually gets to come up with original ideas.
Yeah.
But you know, we got marketing.
That's it.
I'm gonna speak to venues and be like, look, who wants to work with us for Good Beer Week? But beyond that, because I don't have a marketing background, so I'm in the mercy. I'm at their mercy. So
I'm just impressed that like DJ and the crew could back up like having a few beers, more than a few beers, and then doing something the next day. Like Simo and I went to the Friday night at GABS with the intention, we bought tickets to GABS the next day, and we're going to go to Carwin for the Bottle Logic collab launch. And we made it to neither on the Saturday. It was
tough. Like
Yeah.
your brain wants to do it all, but your body physically doesn't want to.
Oh, like I'm there. Like these two know, like I love a spreadsheet. So I'm there setting up what we're doing. Like Friday night, here's the beers we're going to. Like it's super rigid, and then the next morning at 7 a.m. it's like, oh, we're not doing anything for the next.
I think
Yeah.
with us internally, it's a big deal. Like it's a major event in the calendar year, and it's important to get a crew flying down for it.
Yep.
Because there's nothing worse than a brewery getting involved in Good Beer Week to not have the staff to represent it. Like, that can happen. So we did the opposite. It was just like, nah, we're going to get a big crew.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it costs. We're just going to get everyone down there and make our mark. It's important. And look, also, let's not forget with the Status Quo result, Hottest 100, so recently, it's important that we strike whilst the iron is hot.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it, like with the beers, you'd like a slight variance. Some people might no longer love the beer, or they might change their opinion on beers. Like with you guys, it's like you're the talk of the town. Imagine if you show up to a Good Beer Week and there's no one there.
Yeah,
like you mentioned, it's
but it was full grind for DJ and everyone. Like a lot of the crew from HQ, they came down, they smashed out 3 or 4 days with us on the ground, and then, which is great because me and my colleague at the time, it was not enough for just two reps to handle. And then they flew back up. They had maybe a bit of respite in between, and then it was Sydney GABS straight away. So we basically pack up all the equipment on a pallet, shrink wrap it, pop it in the back of a truck, send it from Melbourne to Sydney, and then we had the Brisbane one on top of that.
Yeah.
God, I don't know what order they did it in, but it was just mad. But look, great exposure.
Especially with your big fun house, inflatable fun house, and packing that up.
And it
like
did.
the inflatable safari. But the idea behind that was because our beer was balloon animals, right?
Yes.
So, and we had a balloon maker on site
Which we all just finished drinking in the tasting panel.
Yes,
There you go.
which was
What do you
delicious.
I mentioned to you before, we actually recorded. Lately, I'm like, I think I like West Coast a bit more, so I like oat creams when it comes to the sweetness.
That's
that was
right.
a perfect amount of sweetness.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I had
less
the first,
than hill people.
Well, as soon as I had the first
Yes.
sip, it was very, very different to the what was the IPA before that one?
Sub-Zero.
Sorry, the Sub-Zero.
Yeah.
Such a huge difference in
Yes.
flavour, but it wasn't the sweetness, which I thought maybe was going to be the contributing factor. Delicious. Just, polished it up a bit
Yeah, I
quicker
love
than
it, and I
expected.
really like hill people as well. Like, even though I think it's a bit sweeter. I use the term sweeter lightly. Like, I wouldn't define the beer as sweet. I know consumers can get that muddled up. You know, it's like with wine. Like people can confuse a dry red wine with being sweet because their brain and the palate is detecting the fruit characteristics coming through. But then they'll say, "Oh, it's sweet," and it's like, no, it's not. It's actually a dry wine. But you think it's sweet because the fruit landing on your palate is telling your brain it's sweet
Yeah,
fruit.
fruit is sweet.
Yeah. So, I love that hill people, man. Because I'm not even a fan of dessert beers. So I'm just gonna put it out there. Like I'm beyond that. Like I understood the hype around them when everyone was brewing, chocolate cake this and chocolate brownie that and all this and Tim Tams and things like whatever, ice creams. Like, I get it. Like, it's an industry that we strive for creativity, and that's important. And I always condone that. But at the same time, from my own personal perspective, like sometimes I just want a nice stout to be a stout for what it is.
Yeah.
I sound boring now saying that, don't I?
No.
But what I'm saying is that I'm pleased Mountain Culture just don't chuck like all the confectionery bars into the brew for every single goddamn limited release. Because if they did, I think it would just get a bit repetitive and it would be a bit boring and everything would be sweet.
Well, I was going to mention Simo has been a known, not hater, but when he sees lactose in a beer, he's like, it's going to be way too sweet for me.
Yeah.
But Mountain Culture often in the oat cream IPAs contains lactose, but it's funny, Simo, first time he's like, nah, I don't like sweet, and then he'll have the Mountain Culture one, he's like, ooh,
pleasantly
I
surprised.
like this.
Well, hang on, we've got a breaking news question to ask, Simon.
Yes.
You're having your first Mountain Culture Red IPA.
I am.
Now, notoriously
Awesome.
not a huge fan of the style.
Yeah.
What do you think?
He's halfway through.
Yeah, I know. Now, I have to say, usually, so red IPAs are like super toffee.
Isn't it
and
funny
all that
considering
sort
his
of
hair colour,
stuff.
by the way,
I
don't
know.
you?
Well, talking to a fellow ginger.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you, mate. You and me together.
But I would have to say the bitterness is something that's why I think I'm not always the biggest fan. And it's not just because we're on the pod. This is pretty bloody delicious. I have to say.
There's a huge malt character at the start.
Yeah.
Like maybe by comparison to the beers we just had, it's very different.
And and these have been sitting here for a little while, so it's probably the correct temperature, because I would say they're a little bit better, sort of closer to room temperature. It's good.
What I like about this brew is that the booze is quite well hidden.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because I don't always want an 8% beer.
Yeah.
Is it 8%?
Yeah.
I didn't look at that. There you go.
You
A
wouldn't
few
know.
years ago, I would smash them back, but now
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I've got to be selective. But I don't need to repeat myself. I told you why. But I love that double red.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah, I never had
And the
this
core
one.
range
It's
of
really
red
nice.
as it is, I don't think there's actually a huge difference in the flavour of the beer in the end, but that's why they do such a great job of hiding the booze as it is. I think the malt feels slightly more ramped up. That's probably the booze backbone potentially.
That's right.
But yeah,
It's an interesting one to have in the core range. The fact that it's a double, because you could argue the point. Well, why don't you just make a nice 6 or 6.5% red IPA?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
And
or
again,
a red ale at 5%.
Well, and again, the consumers would have faith in it because they know it's us, and they know we do IPA as well. So that it's who knows, on the horizon. Maybe we'll release a more consistent kind of, a more readily available, should I say, red IPA. But for the time being, it's a good mover.
But yeah, I think that's cool though, because it's like, normal breweries wouldn't go 8% red IPA core.
Yeah.
They go, well, I don't know about that.
Leave
but
the doubles for the limited.
but it's like, no, we're confident this is
Yeah.
a banger. So
But look,
let's
at the end of the
have
day,
it.
these things are always evolving. It's part of our business model, isn't it? It wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be good if we didn't sit down every once in a while and review things.
Yeah.
And I think. I can't believe we're halfway through the year already. But I was going to say this might be the year that we sit down and just consider a few little things, and if that means we tweak stuff here and there, then nothing drastic, but we save the really experimental stuff for the.
Just really need Be Kind Rewind available at all times. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
Well, I think the lane sellers buy it, and if
Yeah.
they don't, maybe ask them why.
Then we.
we're good mates with Chris. We can
No,
usually put
Chris
in
is a
good
requests.
bloke.
Yeah.
We really value Chris.
And funnily enough, I've been surveying the scene. There's Murray
Chris is here
in
tonight.
the house. Chris is in the house.
Oh
from
yeah,
Lane
all our
Cellars.
friends are here.
Yeah, everyone's.
speak of the devil, then.
Yeah, the who's who of Albury craft
we
beer
like
is here.
to sort of finish off some pods with sort of fun questions.
Yes.
You mentioned about knowing about hops and stuff. Do you have a favourite hop or a hop that you're not a fan of as well? So maybe a best hop and least favourite hop.
I really love Mosaic.
Oh,
Yeah.
mate.
Okay.
Preach.
I don't know if that's a real common answer to give, but it's. Look, I like others in their own right, but my love affair with that started in London when I was living there. It was the Colonel. I don't know if you know the Colonel. They're from Bermondsey, southeast, and they.
I was going to say, I
We
know
know
a
KFC.
Colonel.
I've had the mountain culture beer with the fried chicken recipe, so maybe.
Yeah, I was
it
going to say
all-
after these 5 beers, I might be going to see the Colonel.
The Colonel was spelt Kernal, I think.
Okay, yeah.
So southeast London in Bermondsey, along the brewing mile that exists down there, where there's a mile-long stretch of road and there's just numerous breweries. If you're in there, go and visit. It's a great part of town. But they were making a Mosaic, either an IPA or a pale. I'm going back 10 years now, but it was a cracking beer, and I just fell in love with it since then. And I've tried some Aussie Mosaic that's even been used in like hopped sour ales, for example.
Yep.
Which have worked really well.
Yeah.
I really love hoppy sours. But yeah, there you go. That's my answer.
Yeah,
Mosaic.
nice.
Yeah.
Mosaic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Well,
Well,
we better not keep you too long.
yeah, look, I did ask in the email correspondence, I believe it was 10 to 15 minutes, and we have pinched you for 50 minutes.
5-0.
Yes.
That's me not shutting up. I do apologise.
No,
You probably
it's-
got a load of listeners out
No.
there. So is that Johnny
No,
Boat ever
that's
keep his
absolutely
mouth
not the
shut?
case.
I think
That
the
is me-
listeners are happy it's not Zach with his 3-minute questions or me
Yes.
just rambling about something.
Yes, and by me, and
It's
by
something
me,
different.
And by me saying that, that's me saying sorry. But it's been,
It's been really nice.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you,
It's good
mate.
that you're here and supporting the local scene. I think it's really important, and well done, thank you. And I'm pleased you enjoy the beers.
Oh, so good, mate.
Thank
so
you.
good. Thank you.
If
very
you
much.
had told us even less than 12 months ago hey, you get to do a podcast and like chat to someone from mountain culture, we would have gone, nah, surely not. You're kidding.
It's not
You gotta be
happening.
kidding.
It's not every day I have the time to venture out of Melbourne. Obviously Ballarat, Bendigo are places that they get serviced every now and again, but beyond that, it's hard because you're talking overnight stays, and you got to. We don't have to justify it, but you know, if I'm going to be from a business perspective, you know, we can't just drive out here just for one thing. It's got to be several. You've got to make it worthwhile.
We found that with other things as well, like Wodonga. Everyone says, "Oh, it's right in the middle of Sydney and Melbourne." It's like, yeah, but it's also very far from both Sydney and Melbourne.
But yeah, I think finally I just have one ask from you, Johnny. If you're coming through town and you're on the way to Katoomba, just if there's any room in the back,
Pick us up.
pick us up. 'Cause
We don't take up a lot of room.
We'll certainly come with you.
I
Because
drive a Renault Traffic, so there's room in the back.
yeah, that's
But just make sure the old coppers don't.
no, we won't tell them.
We're very quiet. We're very quiet.
down.
But yeah, we've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks, guys.
I could talk to you.
I
for
better make a
years.
move.
No, definitely.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Good on you, Johnny.
Cool. Cheers.
Thanks, mate.